This networking mistake kills 90% of funding rounds before they even start. And one counterintuitive insight I learned from raising $60 million myself proves that most founders are approaching investor meetings completely backwards. So now, in this video, I'm going to show you the 3 components that separate funded founders from the ones who can never find and meet enough investors to successfully fundraise for their startups. Just before we do that, a quick question for you. What's your biggest challenge when it comes to building your investor network? Drop it in the comments below. I'll read everyone and try and answer it in a future video for you. But first, let me show you the brutal reality of what happens when you get this wrong so that you can avoid it in your future funding rounds. So my first startup, I was raising for 6+ months. I didn't meet a single investor that whole time. And the reason why is I didn't really know what to do. And I had to shut down that business in the end as well. And in my second startup, I met 5 investors. I tried to strong arm myself and force myself into meetings, go through LinkedIn DMs, cold email as much as you can, but I only met 5 investors and ended up failing that company as well. Now, it was only in my third startup where I learned from these mistakes of 2 failed companies where I met hundreds of investors and raised $16 million in total. And the biggest difference wasn't just that my pitch or my product was different. It was actually fundamentally how I was conducting my raise, and more importantly, how I build my investor network and actually do the outreach to find and meet the right investors. And here's what most founders don't understand. I speak to founders every single day. And when I ask the same question of how many investors are you actually meeting, the answer is almost always the same. 5, maybe 10 at maximum over months. Let me know in the comments if you felt that way as well. But most of the time it's 2 or 3 or not even be able to meet a single person. But here's the brutality of fundraising, right? Most investors you meet will reject you. From my studies, I found that clients, that takes around 35 to 40 meetings for that first term sheet, and then it exponentially increases because the next term sheet is going to be easier because you got the first one. But the real aim for you to get is at least 35 to 40 meetings. That's the minimum. And what you need to realize is that fundraising is really fundamentally a volumes game because of that. It's about finding the right investors for you and increasing the volume of investors. Yet 90% of founders are playing the 5 investor game and wondering why it's failing. Wondering why you can't get a funding round done when you're barely speaking to anyone. And real network building to get to that volume is not about strong arming yourself into messaging random people directly on LinkedIn or doing as many cold emails. That's just not how fundraising is ever going to work for you to be able to get enough investor meetings for you to actually have a success in your funding round. The volume is really about creating what I call a fundraising pipeline, i.e. a systematic approach to generate warm introductions at scale that's going to get you the amount of introductions and then also the amount of meetings that you need to succeed. So I'm going to show you the exact 3 components you need to think about when building a network, and then along with that, the steps that it takes to do it. So, component 1. I want you to imagine you're trying to win a raffle, but you only have 1 ticket. What do you think your odds are? They're pretty terrible, right? But if you have 100 tickets, suddenly you're in the game. And this is the thing, fundraising is exactly the same. You can't treat just sending a message to a few people and hope that they're going to actually want to speak to you and they're going to connect you. Even the best founders, of all of the connections they send, they're never going to get 100% of people actually booking a meeting with them. Where I see founders go wrong all the time is I'm speaking to them and saying, what have you done? They say, I've sent 20 messages to people on LinkedIn and nothing's happened. But the thing is, you need to be thinking about how do I create at least 100+ warm connections that gives yourself a real chance. Because the thing is, even if we perfect your narrative, and there's other videos to go through that, but if you really want to look into how you build your narrative, even if you perfect it in the best way, 20, 30, 40% of the people that you send to, and they still come from a warm connection, they're still going to say no to you. So we need to increase the volume as much as possible, and we need to think about a benchmark of a volume of at least 100+ warm connections. Now, when most founders do when they hear this is they panic, right? Because they think, I don't know 100 investors, I don't have a network. But the thing is, you actually do, and you just aren't really building out the system in place of how you do that. Because you're not looking for 100 direct connections to all of these investors. What you're looking for is pathways to 100 connections. And that's what brings us to the second component of this, because without this, you'll never really get the volume that you need. So component 2, when I speak to founders, the biggest question is, I don't have an investor network. And the problem is because you're looking too directly at investors yourself. Most people don't have direct connections to 100 plus investors, even the best founders. You don't need 100 direct connections to investors. All you really need is 15 to 20 what I call super connectors, i.e. people who can introduce you to multiple investors at a time. And then if you do that enough times, you'll be able to get to a point of where you can reach and get connections to 100 investors. Only having to speak to 15 to 20 people, that's a lot easier. Not to mention that these are not investors. You're not looking for investment. You're just trying to build your network. And this really is the Pareto principle as a whole, right? 20% of the people that you speak to and your connectors that you have will generate 80% of your investor meetings. So what you need to do is you need to find a way in which you can find those people, connect with those people, and then build out your network in the right way. Now, these aren't necessarily the most obvious people, right? Sometimes it's your best connector is a former colleague who joined a portfolio company, or a customer who knows multiple VCs, or even another founder who's been through the process. And by doing this, what it allows you to get to this component is really allows you to build in a connection with other people around your industry who love what you're doing and who are willing to connect you to the right people, and then finding the people who are super connectors who can then reach to multiple investors and get to that 100 plus. But the thing is, without the next component, you'll just fail before you even start, because you won't give yourself enough time to get this going properly and actually fundamentally succeed in it. So, component 3. When I speak to founders, one of the biggest problems that I see when it comes to funding is you aren't preparing long enough and you aren't giving yourself a long enough time frame. So you think, oh wow, okay, I'm running out of money in 2 months' time and I need to fundraise. And then you go out fundraising and you can't even meet a single investor because you've not done the prep work. And this is why it's such a large component to the reality of getting an investor network and finding and meeting investors is you need to think long term in terms of your fundraise, and especially on the prep, and especially when it comes to network, right? You can't think of this as a 1 month sprint before your raise and that all you need is 2 weeks and you'll be fine, and then you can just push yourself as hard as much as possible. It just doesn't work like that. If you really want to be successful, this is a 6 to 18 month marathon that you need to build out, and every week constantly be working at it. This is the only way in which you're going to be able to get the volume that you need to succeed at fundraising. The founders that I worked with who successfully fundraised, Keith, who closed £1.7 million, Marco raised $4 million, they're already thinking about their next round and building out their network because they realize that what they've done so far is great, but what they do now is going to affect them in their Series A in the next 2 years. And you need to be thinking the same thing. If you're fundraising in 6 months from now, the work you do now will fundamentally be the reason why you get funding or not. So you need to build out your network over a longer period of time, set out dates, right? Put out your calendar and say, okay, what day do I want to actually fundraise? Whether it's September or January, work back month by month and say, okay, what do I need to do in the first month before the fundraise? What do I have to do in the second month, the third month, the fourth month, the fifth month? So you know every week, these are the things I need to be doing. That's the only way in which you're going to be structured in how you build your network and fundamentally build the connections that you need to be successful. Now, here's why this system works. Investors are pattern matchers, right? They're looking for trust from you, from their network. They're really trying to understand if you have a great network, and they're really trying to understand from their connectors who's actually good and bad. When they see deal flow from multiple trusted sources pointing to the same founder, that's what creates the social proof that you're great. You're not just another cold email. You're the founder that everyone is talking about and genuinely believes is going to be able to be successful. So here's exactly how you need to build this system in 3 steps. So step 1, I just want you to do a network audit. So map out everyone you know who might know investors. Former colleagues, university friends, customers, advisors, other founders. Most founders discover they have 3 to 5 times more potential connectors than they actually thought they did. Step 2, you want to start the connector cultivation in how you do this. So what you want to do is you want to reach out to your potential connectors, not just to ask for introductions, but to provide value first, right? Share articles, make introductions for them, offer help with their challenges, build out a list of people that you're helping already who potentially could connect you, and then ask them for extra connections, right? Say, hey, I'm looking to build my network. Who do you think we should speak to? And just grow that over a longer period of time and constantly speaking to them. And then step 3 is really about strategic timing. Build out that value and then coordinate your outreach so you're building your network at the right stages at the right time. Whether it's at the beginning, you're just building your network, to as you're ramping up the fundraise, you're asking for introductions, to actually activating the introductions. You need to be setting the stage and doing strategic timing when it comes to which stage of your network building you're in and when do you do what. But here's what most founders get wrong. You think networking is about asking for favors, but real networking is creating value for others first and then leveraging those relationships when you need them. So don't make the mistake of starting your network building when you start fundraising. Start 6 to 18 months before you need the money. This is exactly how all the founders I've worked with have raised over $250 million combined, because they all understood that fundraising success is determined by the quality of your network, not the quality of your pitch deck. And they've done the work they needed to and built the systems in place to do that in the right way. So look, today you learned why volume is the secret weapon of successful fundraising, especially when it comes to the network and the brutal reality of it. You learn the 3 components that transforms networking from a hope to a systematic pipeline of building, and then the specific steps to really do this properly. But if you really want to get advanced and learn the advanced networking strategy to really implement this in the right way, then check out my next video where I break down exactly how to do this properly.